I'd be laying in my bed, and there would be a figure in the doorway, kind of short, squat, stumpy, work his way up to the foot of my bed. It's usually 3 small ones, accompanied by a tall, skinny one. And I would be completely paralyzed.
Out in the woods, shadows creep slow. Footprints deep where no man should go. Cold winds howl through hollers and brooks. Whispers of Bigfoot in the way it looks. Myths, monsters, and bullets in the night. Under a pale moon, strange glowing light. Truth's out there like a blade it cuts. Myths, monsters, and bullets run amok.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to Myths, Monsters, and Mullets. If you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share, you can email me at mythsandmullets@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook and shoot me a message over there. And if you've seen Bigfoot, any kind of cryptid, I really want to hear about it. Maybe you've seen a UFO. Maybe you saw a ghost in your bedroom. I want to hear about it. mythsandmullets@gmail.com. It's got some exciting news over on YouTube. We finally hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you to everybody that's hitting that button. If you haven't yet and you're enjoying the show, make sure you're hitting subscribe, like the shows, comment on all of them, share it with a friend. That's the only way we can grow. If you're listening on Spotify and you're thinking, man, I just can't wait until the next episode, I'd like to hear it a little sooner. There's a way you can do that now. You can now subscribe, and for $2.99 a month, you'll get early access to every episode and hear it before everybody else. Make sure you're checking out the descriptions on all these videos. Down below, you're going to find a list of all my favorite podcasts. Everything from Nevermore Hollows to Drunken Cryptids, Chumming with the Spirits, Ghost Gossip. There's so many down there. They're all my favorites. I listen to them every week. I enjoy them, and I think you will too. If you're like me, you listen to a lot of podcasts at work or on your drive to and from work. You can't be on your phone while you're doing that. If you want to hear a variety, including Myths, Monsters, and Mullets, check out Midnight Realm Radio. I'll put a link in the description, but this is a new 24/7 internet radio station where you're going to hear true crime, paranormal, all kinds of neat podcasts. And when there's not a podcast playing, I got some great music playing. Check out the link in the description. It's all created by Cryptic Creature Show. I'm honored that they asked me to be a part of it. Tonight's episode's a good one. We have Ryan coming on the show. He's had a lifetime of UFO, strange phenomenon in the sky experiences. You don't want to miss this one. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome back to Myths, Monsters, and Mullets. I am your host, John Methenkamp. On tonight's show, we have Ryan from California. He made a comment on one of my videos and said he had a story that he'd like to tell. So Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to say thanks for having me on. And to tell you a little bit about my background, I grew up in Colorado and had a lot of really weird stuff happen in my childhood related to, I guess, what you'd call the UFO or extraterrestrial phenomenon. And the main reason I had commented on one of your videos is that I believe someone showed or talked about sort of a rectangular UFO they had seen. And as I'm sure you know, that's a super uncommon shape, to the point where, you know, when I've talked to people about my personal experience in the past, they say, oh, that can't be true because it's not a classic flying saucer. Because, of course, in an infinite space, they have to all be flying saucers, because that makes sense. But basically what happened to me, if I can take you back, is when I was 14 years old, probably, I want to say it was maybe 2003 or so, me and my buddy Jacob were on a bowling team in middle school. And I had been invited to stay at his house that night, so we were going to have a sleepover, and play some Super Mario Brothers, and we're riding out towards his home in Kersey, Colorado. Now that's sort of a smaller, like Greeley's was a small cow town, and then Kersey's an even smaller satellite town around that. So we're heading way out into the country, and I'm kind of doing the kid thing, putting my head up against the window, looking up, and suddenly above us, I see coming down this rectangular shaped metallic craft. It almost had sort of the lines of the closest thing my kid mind could compare it to was like a Crown Victoria without wheels. We always joked and called it the flying car for years. But, obviously there was no tailpipe or tires or windows or anything on it. It looked like it was made of like a gunmetal gray or black sheet metal with very vibrant sort of fuchsia plasma coming off the bottom and rear of it. And we're in, his mother's car, and it passes over us from east to west, slowly gliding, and it maybe gets 50 feet at its lowest. So this is up close and personal, clear as day. This is not a shimmering dot in the distance or a star that moves across the sky. I've since made several drawings of it, and I can't quite capture it. So finally, I had a professional do one this year, which I'll hold up to the camera if that's okay. This is kind of what it looked like.
Okay, yeah. You had sent me that picture. I'll make sure that if it doesn't come through on the video, that I will include that picture in this episode.
I sure appreciate it. And so me and Jacob, first, weirdly, I had this thought just before I saw it of how weird would it be if I saw a UFO right now, okay? And then immediately, there it is. And our first response is to start giggling uncontrollably. Like, both of us, it's like the laughing gas turned on in the car. And to me, that's a totally inappropriate emotional response. And if you look at some of the UFO lore, it seems like people have these sort of things happen where they'll feel euphoric or giggly or suddenly kind of dopey. At the same time, his mom in the front seat, we're trying desperately between our laughs to get her attention, saying, hey, there's a UFO right above us. You need to look up. We need to pull the car over. She, in my mind, I think maybe she thinks or that we're joking or we're trying to pull one over on her. She doesn't even respond. In retrospect, she was totally locked in. No response, just driving forward. And it's like she had been shut off. What's kind of weird about that is I talked to my friend recently. Now, this was, 24 or so years ago. And he was able to describe to me, piece by piece, this entire situation. We hadn't talked to each other in, at least 15 years at this point. And he said he still thinks about it every day, and his mom has no memory of this situation.
So let me ask you this. Do you feel like there was lost time?
It's hard to say because we were, middle schoolers back before people really had cell phones, so we wouldn't have known what time it was anyway. But there very well could be. I mean, I've done the regressive hypnosis to try to see if there was anything hidden underneath that, like a layer of something I'm missing. And while it did come back super clearly, I don't remember any missing time from that. That said, I did have a lot of terrible and weird nightmares after that. So we can get into that if you want. But to me, this all comes around to the idea that maybe there's multiple layers of reality. This is the one weird thing that's happened in my life I can hang my hat on and say someone else was there for it. We both saw it. We can both describe it back. It happened, and in the conversation of UFO disclosure, I've already been disclosed. I saw one up close. I can't tell you who was driving it, but we got a really good look at it.
Right. You were talking about like the plasma as you described it. Was it like shooting off of it, or was it just like shimmering around the edges, or
I'd say it was more like shimmering around the edges. It almost looked like a fog coming off the bottom and back of it. Very sort of hazy.
I know you were inside a car, but could you hear anything?
No. Totally dead silence. And when it went over, it didn't move in a way that would indicate that it had any sort of aerodynamic flight platforms, if that makes sense. Like it just strafed over us. Whereas, an airplane might turn like this.
Well, I mean, that's one of the criticisms you hear about like Star Wars and Star Trek. You don't need to be aerodynamic in space.
No. And this thing definitely operated more like it was in a vacuum than it was interacting with our atmosphere in any serious way. Now, one thing I forgot to when it left, it took off like a bat out of hell. Just instantly 0 to 1,000.
Wow. Did it go like straight up or did it go away from you?
If I recall, it seems to me that it just went off past the horizon horizontally.
What were your beliefs in UFOs before this event?
So, I guess since this was, 2004 and I grew up in the 90s, my beliefs were I grew up watching the X-Files. So to me, it was TV stuff. And it kind of hit me like a gut punch when it happened because I felt like I had seen something I wasn't supposed to. Like the immediate feeling was guilt. Like, oh, you're not supposed to see that. This is supposed to be not real. And I know it's like a weird reaction to have, but it felt like I'd, walked in on my parents or something, that kind of, whoa.
Yeah, actually, that's not as weird as you think. I hear that with some ghost encounters. I've heard that with Bigfoot encounters. That's not as strange as you would think it is.
That's interesting. I mean, it's such a, I guess, extraordinary experience to have. You're going to have a whole range of weird emotions around it.
Exactly. This is something that I think everybody kind of thinks, I hope these things are real,
Mm-hmm.
or these things might be real, but they never really give it much credence until it's hitting them in the face like that. And then when it does, it just changes your reality. So yeah, your brain is on overload at that moment and doesn't know how to process it. It's just like little kids when they get frustrated, they don't know whether they're mad or sad or what, so they cry and they scream. That's because they don't know how to process it.
Absolutely.
Now you're 14 years old, you can process things, but even you said you had this like euphoric response to it. So your brain doesn't know how to process these things.
For sure. And I do, and this is just conjecture dipping into my personal beliefs here, but I do think that UFOs have the ability to manipulate our emotions. Even just outside of it being a crazy thing, you're going to have a big reaction to it anyway. But seeing his mom switched off like that, it seems like, we're working with a pocket calculator up here that they can absolutely do whatever they want with.
Yeah. I mean, if we don't know exactly what they are, but whether they can come from light years away or they're interdimensional or whatever, their technology is way above ours. So the ability to be able to manipulate our brains isn't out of the realm of possibility.
Not at all. And, honestly, John, for me, what this incident brought into stark relief for me was a lot of sort of childhood and family experiences I had had. And, it kind of, to me, was almost the cherry on top to where everything that had happened up to that point I thought was maybe a nightmare or a dream or just, psychosis running in my family or something like that until someone else from outside the family is here and they can see it too. And it's in her face. And I can go into that stuff a little bit if that's all right.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely go into that. I just want to make sure that we've covered this event fully before we move on.
Absolutely.
And maybe I missed this. What time of day was it?
This would have been probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was the afternoon summertime bowling league. So, there was no one else on the road either. We were pretty much, the only car out there in the cornfields.
Okay. So it was a nice, bright, sunny day then.
Yeah, one of those summer days where there's not a cloud in the sky. Perfect visibility.
Yeah. Because I know there's going to be people that's going to ask that question. Was it ball lightning? Ball lightning is so rare that I don't think they've ever caught it on film, but that's what everybody goes straight to is ball lightning.
Well, sure, and I've had people I've talked to about this who are, you know, rational folks who don't believe in this kind of thing, and that's okay. They have said maybe, you're living in an agricultural area at the time. Maybe you mistook a crop duster. Now, as a boy who grew up around cornfields, I'm pretty sure I know what a crop duster looks like. And it's not that.
Yeah. I saw a meme one time that said, you don't believe in cryptozoology. That's okay. It's kind of a smart person's thing anyway.
That's great. I love that.
So I kind of apply that to the paranormal. So if you don't have an open mind, I think that shows your intelligence. That's just my opinion.
And, I think these kinds of peak experiences like you're talking about, whether that's seeing a UFO or a poltergeist encounter or a Bigfoot, I think it's such a mind-opening experience that once it happens, you realize most people who don't have those type of experiences are just sort of skimming the surface of reality. There's so much more beneath it, in my belief.
I think with the advent of cell phones, people don't look around anymore. They look down. They're not looking up. They're not looking out into the woods as they drive by. And I see these questions being asked. Why are there so many more sightings? I don't know that there are more sightings. I think that the one good thing about the internet is that there's a place to record and read about these events. Whereas before the internet and before cell phones and things like that, you didn't have a way to, or you didn't have an outlet for it.
Yeah, I mean, if your only option is to go to one of the, three major broadcast corporations to get your story out there, no one's going to be hearing about a Chris Bledsoe or a Whitley Strieber or any of those guys. Now anyone with a cell phone can just post stuff online and say, hey, this is what happened to me.
Right. Or they can come on Myths, Monsters, and Mullets and tell their story.
That's right.
Shameless plug. I've got to get those in.
That's great.
So you kind of alluded to this. There was things that happened before, or maybe in your family that happened before?
Yes to all the above. And what's kind of weird about this whole thing is that event with my friend Jacob when I was a kid, I sort of stored it away. Because when we tried to talk about it with our friends, even though we'd both seen it, we kind of got teased about it. And, we didn't have anything better to refer to it than a flying car. And maybe that was part of it. But we kind of got teased and stopped talking about it, and I filed it in the back of my mind for years. Similarly, just a couple years ago, driving down the mountain, I live in a place called Tehachapi, and Highway 58 runs straight down through to Bakersfield, California. And going down that mountain, I saw an unmistakable orange orb. And just totally stationary, not fluttering around like a Chinese lantern or a drone or a hot air balloon. And just there one moment, turn my head, look back, totally gone. Now, that's not that big of a deal to me compared to the other one, but what that did is it made the memories all come flooding back. Because I started, after 20, 4 years or whatever, I started thinking about these things and sort of connecting the dots. And I realized that not only myself, but pretty much every member of my family going back to my great grandparents had had some sort of encounter like this. And I kept asking.
Before we go into that, let's talk about this orb a little bit. How big do you think this orb was?
It's so hard with things in the sky because there's not something next to it to reference
Right.
it. Like I'd love to have seen like a jet plane flying right next to it, for some scale. But I can tell
And
you,
it's hard to even tell how far away it is against the sky.
yeah, yeah, and I'd say now it was over a fairly well-known place out there called Murray Farm. So maybe it was 500 feet above that. I'm coming down the mountain, and from my perspective, it's about the size of a dime held at arm's length. So it
But
could,
I mean, you can cover the moon with your thumb if you do that.
yeah. So how big is it versus how close was it? If I had to guess, gun to my head, I'd say at least 6 to 10 feet across,
Okay. Yeah, so pretty good size.
and absolutely stationary. Didn't see it move or do any of what people call the observables or wild maneuvers. It was just there and then blinked out.
Okay. That was all I really had about that.
Okay.
Because I mean, even it was a very short
Yeah.
experience, and you didn't experience anything like you did the first time, like with the euphoric feeling or anything like that.
No, and I had enough time to like rub my eyes, make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. It was maybe 30 seconds long, and
Actually, that's actually quite a long time for any kind of encounter. I do hear longer encounters with UFOs, but with most paranormal encounters, usually they're 5 seconds or less. So 30 seconds is a long time.
sure, it seems like a lot of times they kind of hit you before you have time to process it, right?
Right. Right. So, okay. Well, so let's go on to, you were talking about, was it your grandparents or great grandparents?
Yeah. So, first of all, as I'm thinking through this, I start asking family members. And I guess if we want to go chronological, we can start with my grandma. She's a very religious person, no nonsense, practically Puritan. And so I thought for sure her answer would be no. She's, I think, 86 now. And I asked her, hey, Grandma, this might sound weird, but has anyone in the family ever experienced anything revolving around UFOs? And this is only because I'd heard that a lot of times this runs in families, and I had never thought about or examined that at all until I read a Jacques Vallée book. And I was thinking she'd say no, and then my heart kind of sank when the response came back. She uses Facebook Messenger. She said, actually, yes. Oh, crap. Okay. So she told me that back in the 1920s, my great grandparents, her parents, who lived out in Twin Falls, Idaho, in the middle of nowhere, a couple of potato farmers, they were driving.
Potatoes in Idaho?
Surprise,
It's a
surprise.
scandal.
But they were driving home from the grocery store at night in the dark, and I guess a sort of silver ball of light descended in front of the road, in front of their vehicle. Flash cut to it's the next morning. Apparently, that's where the memory ends. They woke up the next morning. My great grandparents both had this happen, and their field is covered in little silver hairs that disintegrate when my grandpa touches them. Now, that's significant because if you know about the miracle at Fatima in Portugal, when what they believed was the Virgin Mary left, she left behind a bunch of silver threads that disappear when you try to touch them.
I knew I'd heard that somewhere. And I know about the silver threads, but I couldn't remember where. I want to have to reread on that, but I have heard that story.
Yeah, and it's not like super common, but it does happen. And I've read a couple different times, and I guess they'll call it angel hair sometimes. But my grandma described it as being something like tinsel.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So your grandma saw it too?
No, that's so she would have not even been born yet, but she said that Harold, my great grandfather, described it as being like tinsel. And before he asked, or anyone asked, no, they did not save a jar of it in the barn somewhere. I've had people ask
That you
that,
know of.
right?
You may need to go investigate.
Right? Um, but that one was weird. She had never had anything like that happen. I'm sure years ago, if you asked her, she would have said no because she was a pastor's wife. So this, for her, that's a very out of pocket thing to even comment on.
Which I don't, and I know you're kind of a new listener to the show, but I do have an episode called the Paranormal Bible. Actually, that's what it's called on Spotify. I forget what it's called on YouTube.
Okay.
I think it's the intersection of faith and something. But anyway, I am a Christian, and when I look at the Bible, I see all kinds of references to the paranormal,
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. What is it?
and that's the whole that whole episode is I had two pastors come on with me and another podcaster, and we discussed paranormal in the Bible because it's mind blowing to me that you can read the Bible, which has all this paranormal stuff in it, and then not believe in the paranormal.
Right. Right.
And I kind of went off on a tangent there, but that's okay because it's my show and I'll do what I want.
That's awesome. And, part of my background growing up, we were, Thursday and Sunday churchgoers. And I often felt that the structure of the church is definitely different than the nature of spirituality. Whereas, you might have a direct interaction with the divine, however you choose to define that, but that's going to be different than the interaction you have with your pastor. And there's, what was it, the story of, was it Enoch in there that got pulled into the sky on a flaming chariot? It sounds an awful lot like...
Yeah, he was the only person in the Bible or the only person in history that didn't die and went to heaven.
Yeah, that to me sounds an awful lot like an abduction. And, that's just flavor talking there. I don't know if that's what, I wasn't there. But
right.
Even in the old Vaimanas, ancient Vedic Hindu texts, they describe Vaimanas, these flying saucer things, flying around as chariots for all the gods to fight each other in the sky.
Yeah, they would have big battles over in the skies. And when you kind of look into it, it kind of sounds like Star Wars, like they're shooting lasers and missiles and stuff at each other.
And I got to think, just like me trying to just describe it as a flying car, because my father was a used car salesman. That's what I was around all the time. To me, that makes sense. It might make sense for Enoch to see a chariot of fire in the sky, or other people to see the gods' horses or whatever, because that's your frame of reference for something totally ineffable.
Right. And I don't think a lot of people take that into account when you read old texts or you hear this old lore. This stuff is written in a different time, so they're going to have different references for what they're seeing. They're not going to know what a helicopter is. So they're going to call it, an angry bird or something.
Right. Well, even there's some legend, I suppose, or oral history that when Columbus landed, that the natives didn't even see the boat because they'd never seen a huge ship like that before. And it wasn't until the elder was able to see there's something going on with the waves, there's an object out there, that mentally all of a sudden it clicked and he could see the boat and show the others that the boat was incoming. Um,
Yeah, I've heard that too. And yeah, I mean, you don't have a frame of reference. It's something new. And your mind short circuits.
yeah, totally alien to them, pun intended.
Right. That was punny.
Thank you. Um, but yeah, so that's pretty much it from my mom's mom. Now, my dad's dad and him had another incident, probably in the 70s. And to put that into perspective, my grandfather is a very serious man. He worked on the Apollo project as an engineer, and he helped make, I don't know if you know much about Vietnam, but he helped engineer the Puff the Magic Dragon planes, which is a modified World War II cargo plane that they retrofitted to fight the Viet Cong by dropping flares into the jungle. So this is a serious,
Basically starting forest fires.
yeah. I mean, this is a hardcore, engineer out of the 70s, like working for the government kind of guy, no nonsense. And my father is 14 at the time. This is going to be a recurring theme in our conversation. He's 14 years old, and they're going down the road. He's driving my dad to work, and coming from behind them along the road, not too far from the ground, is what my father described as an orange ball of fire. And he says, probably about the size of a basketball, and it came to past the passenger side, so where he was, past his head in front of the car and zoomed off. At which point my grandfather slams the brakes, skids off the road, and tells him, Richie, you had better not talk to anybody about this ever. This stays between us. And that was it. And my father was a cop in Corpus Christi for years, and so his version of that is way more detailed than mine was, but you can really tell it impacted him, and he remembers it very well. And
So he didn't listen to his father?
no. And what's interesting about it to me, too, is like, I wanted to know if he had talked to anyone else about it. So I called my late grandfather's wife. He remarried after my grandmother died. And I said, Mary, did Grandpa ever talk about a UFO? And she's like, no, we never talked about that kind of thing. I said, okay. Well, because my dad has a story about a fireball that followed them on the road. She said, oh, the fireball. Yes, he told me about that. So, in sort of with a pass between, I have verification from both of them that this did occur.
Wow. So your dad, when he told the story, did he say it actually looked like flames coming off of it, or it was just an orange sphere that looked like the color of fire?
I think just based on what we've talked about, I don't think he meant that looked like it was actually on fire, but definitely orange and fiery. Like, that would probably be a valid one if someone wanted to say, hey, that could have been ball lightning. Okay.
No, I don't buy ball lightning.
It's a pretty weird explanation for too many things, but
It was swamp gas. It was swamp gas and it was ignited by ball of lightning.
all right. But and another weird thing, and this is just my speculation, if you've looked into any of the cover memory stuff, a lot of people who have these encounters are obsessed with owls. Now, my grandfather's entire house was decorated with owl memorabilia. Paintings of owls, pictures of owls, figurines of owls. And for anyone not maybe listening to this and not familiar with that, you might look into, Mike Clelland's Owls and UFOs. It's often cover memory for interactions with the Greys or any other flavor of extraterrestrial.
Have you ever heard of the Owl Man?
No, what's the Owl Man?
It was I believe it was in Britain. There was a rash of sightings of this Owl Man. And then when you start reading these accounts, Yeah, it kind of sounds like exactly what we're talking about, like it was a cover memory, but it's this owl creature that showed up and attacked these girls. But yeah, you're right. A lot of people that have UFO encounters, they often associate with owls, and the owl rabbit hole is huge too. I don't know if you've ever went down just the owl rabbit hole. I
Yeah.
mean, you talk about Lilith, and you're talking about there's so many references to owls and the paranormal.
Oh, absolutely. And I in my own family, my older brother has a number of weird sort of owl, what he thinks are cover memories. And I guess that could probably, if it's all right, we could talk about my household growing up in the 90s, because that's when a lot of weird stuff was happening to all of us, and none of us were talking to each other about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
This is your show.
All right. Well, personally, for me, I had a number of experiences when I was a kid, probably starting around the age of like 4 or 5, where I'd be laying in my bed and there would be a figure in the doorway, kind of short, squat, stumpy, work his way up to the foot of my bed. Sometimes, and this will sound kind of corny, but sometimes they'll be wearing a space helmet, sometimes not. Usually 3 small ones, accompanied by a tall, skinny one. And I would be completely paralyzed. And I mean, not just stuck in my body, unable to move. When you try to move, it would feel like a very intense buzzing over my body, almost like, when your foot falls asleep, but your entire body. And I tried to scream, and nothing would come out. And, it would seem that the tall, skinny one, which was more, I guess you could say, like mantis-like, like insect-like looking, seemed like it was always irritated with me that I wasn't just going with the program. And would be like, why you never get hurt. Why are you upset like this? Stop. You need to calm down. Let's make this easy. And not with words necessarily, it just kind of felt that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like kind of like the implanted memories. A lot of people say that when they have encounters with extraterrestrials or whatever, they never see the mouth move. It's just they hear the voice in their head.
Yeah, very much, very much. And at this same exact era in my life, I'm going through this every night. Well, not every night, but often enough that I'm scared to death to go to bed. Having what my parents referred to as nightmares, where I couldn't unfreeze or scream until everyone else had left the room. And then I was alone in my bed for a few minutes, and then I was able to move and scream. And so I started sleeping with the light on, the door closed, the shades drawn. I still have, to this day, coverings on every window in my house at night. I try not to look out the windows at night, because the impression is that someone might be looking in. And at the same time, my mother is pregnant with my little brother. Okay, we have a 6-year age gap, so I guess that would have made me about 6 at the time. And she, when I came to her and asked her, hey, have you ever had anything weird in your life with UFOs? Again, her answer was yes when I was hoping for a no. She said that a ball of white light came in through her bedroom window and scanned up her body. And after scanning her pregnant belly, rushed back out the window. Yeah.
Holy cow.
And, she talked to my grandmother about it, her friends about it, who thought she was crazy. Talked to our pastor about it, said maybe we better just cool it on that, basically. So, very isolating and painful experience for her. Meanwhile, I'm having weird stuff happen at night, and nobody believes me either. And none of us are connecting the dots. At this same time, my older brother is having experiences. Now he tells me he has memories of owls being in his bedroom window at night and flapping their wings. He has memories of coming back in through his window somehow. And another layer of strangeness, and I want to say I got this from, gosh, who's the fella who does Missing Time? John Mack, I want to say.
Okay.
He talks a little bit about interactions with household pets or just animals generally that end up talking. And I was listening to an audiobook about this, and I swear to God, I almost swerved off the road because there was a story about a household pet saying it's time. And around the same time, we had a Chihuahua, and my brother will swear up and down, walked up to him and said, "It's time." And
What?
And this was during all the weird stuff that's happening in our house. We have a family cabin up in Red Feather, Colorado, where we did back then. And, me and my older brother, turns out, once we got to talking about it, both have a shared memory. And that memory is we had bunk beds in the back of the cabin. And when we first got this place, we had terrible nights. Nobody could sleep. It seemed like there was a lot of noise going on around the cabin. We maybe chalked it up to coyotes or something, but I had thought, I had woken up in the morning and asked my parents if there was an ambulance that came by in the night, because I had seen red and blue flashing lights coming through the window. And that's kind of where my memory of this ended until I did my regression in the past year with a QMAP regression therapist person. And the uncomfortable part is that I remembered something that my brother remembers too, as we spoke about it, which is that I'm in the bottom bunk, he's in the top bunk, and three figures come into the room, one with a very large head, bigger than the others, and he's trying to scream. It puts its finger over his mouth, makes him stop, and they drag him out of the room and make me go back to sleep. And we both remember this. Now, did I imagine that in hypnotherapy? I'm not a psychologist. I don't know if I conflated that in some way, but I know my hypnosis didn't make him also imagine that. That's the unsettling part.
Right. So has your brother had regression therapy?
No, but he's planning to this month, it sounds like. And we've really, after years of sort of being out of contact for various reasons, we reconnected in the past 3 years. And we've kind of been opening up about all these weird experiences. And once you start to compare notes, it's kind of shocking. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it wasn't just him either. I have obviously the little brother that my mom was pregnant with. And he has a story from right around the time he was 14 years old, again. And this is a pattern I see throughout a lot of the abduction lore, is young males at the age of 14 will have a close-up encounter. That is a pattern. Maybe it's just my bias from noticing it a bunch, because it happened to me. But him and my stepbrother, okay, were having a sleepover on a trampoline outside at my dad's house. I was already an adult, moved out of the house at this point, so I didn't hear about it until recently. But apparently, they're jumping on the trampoline, and then they wake back up, meaning nobody remembers having gone to sleep. And above them is something large, circular, and black covering up the sky. And as they wake up, they see it go away. And they spent the rest of the night locked in the basement, cradling their shotguns, waiting for an alien to bust in on them. And of course, he's had a number of little green orb sightings, seeing fireballs going over the ocean when he's fishing in Florida, things like that. So for every member of my family, this is something that sort of followed us, and we've all suffered in silence, and even we've had people outside the family or just other people see things happening concurrently, and just now we're starting to talk to each other about it.
So I wasn't ignoring you. You said this about the 14-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And it made something click. Remember I mentioned the owl man?
Yeah.
The two girls that told the story
Mm-hmm.
were 14 years old.
Because of course they were. Yeah. And it's weird. I've talked to a number of friends or just acquaintances, and first of all, way more people have had these experiences than they're willing to let on. That's the first thing I've learned just talking to people. It's maybe 2 out of 5, it seems like. And pretty much most of them I've talked to have said they had a big encounter at 14. It's the magic number.
Now I got to try to remember what happened to me at 14.
I tell you what, man, with my kids, well, as soon as they turn 14, I'm going to be keeping my little ears open, trying to pay attention. And
I will say this. Now, wait a minute.
yeah.
That would have been about the time that I had my possible Bigfoot encounter.
Really?
I would have been 13, 14 years old. I can't remember the exact date when it happened, because when it happened, I didn't believe in any of this stuff. It was just something weird.
Yeah, it doesn't care if you believe in it.
Right. I know it was before I was driving. So, yeah, it would have had to been like 13, 14 years old. That's odd. I'm going to have to think about that a little harder.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth trying to figure out the math on it, because it seems to just come up so often. I haven't heard anyone else talking about that, but I do hear 14 in the literature over and over and over.
I'm going to ask some of my podcasting buddies if they've ever noticed a pattern with 14 or 14-year-old.
Yeah, and think about that age too. Like, that is such a, you're transitioning from childhood to adulthood. It's such a formative little slice of life in there that things that happen at that age stick with you forever.
Right. And not only that, you think 13, 14 years old, you're just getting out of puberty, and a lot of lore when it comes to like demonic possessions. A lot of things happen with that age group.
Well, yeah. Now, especially in the realm of the UFO area, since there's such an emphasis around reproduction and stories of samples being taken, put it in PG term,
or left in.
Yeah, left in to incubate for a few weeks and taken back out.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, and without, like, I guess, betraying too much confidence, I won't speak to the full story for my brother, but for my own child, I will. His daughter has had, well, we'll say she has drawn some interesting characters that resemble balloon-headed creatures with big eyes. So it runs in family.
Maybe your brother needs to come on Miss Monsters and Mullets.
I bet you he might.
I'm very interested if he is very interested.
I'll talk to him. And yeah,
Absolutely.
I've got 2 kiddos myself, and one of them could not be less interested. No, whatever. He's totally disengaged. And I don't really talk to them about this stuff because I don't want to seed anything in their head. Whatever happens to them, I want it to be natural. But occasionally I'll ask them about their dreams. And My younger son, who, like me, suffers from terrible nosebleeds all the time, and I know that's one of your signs. We had an incident where we were outside grilling, and he runs out screaming, absolutely bloody murder, that a stick figure man tried to come in his window. And I tried to get him to describe it, and he said basically I had gray skin, was tall and skinny with big black eyes, and wrinkly skin. Now,
That is an actual cryptid.
is it?
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
called the stick
The
figure
stick
man?
figure man.
Really?
Yeah, that's what it's described as.
Well, now
I'm
to
gonna
my
look up
mind,
and
it
see if it
sounded
has a
like
different name.
well, and to my mind, it kind of sounded like the tall gray or the mantid sort of thing I dealt with, which also had gray skin. But he also tells me that a few weeks later, he comes in screaming that the stick figure man had poked his head in its room this time, and he ran in the hallway looking for it, and it was gone. And this was during a weird period in his life where, just like poltergeist activity can correlate as well, he would have his closet door open. And
Really?
to the point where I installed a bar on the door, and I stapled a tapestry over his window so nothing could look in anymore, because I dealt with this stuff when I was a kid, and I'm going to take him seriously.
Right. And I think all parents should take their kids serious when they start repeating these same things over and over again. One time, okay, you watched a scary movie. I get that. That can happen. But when these kids start constantly saying, there's something in my closet, something under my bed, something looking in the window, you probably might want to look into that.
For sure. For sure. And, this was right around the time I was reading a lot of John Mack as well, learning about cover memories in relation to animals. And so I just open-ended question without any leading, because my previous career was in market research. So, I know how to ask a question without leading someone to the answer. And I asked him, have you had any dreams about animals lately? And he said that yes, he had a dream about a deer that stands upright with big eyes, and that basically he had gone outside in his dream, went out front, looked into the sky, saw a big red triangle, started to feel the ground fall out from beneath him, ran back inside to see the deer standing in the kitchen looking at him, and then blacked
Wait
out.
a minute. How old is he at this point?
4.
Holy cow. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So we're not
Sorry.
watching X-Files with him or anything,
Right. That's where I was going with that was, this isn't an 8 or 9-year-old that maybe accidentally watched the wrong movie.
No, this is like Coco Melon and Sesame Street age.
Holy cow.
And so he wakes up within this dream on a metal table with a tray next to him that he describes as being covered in little swords. Now, to me, that sounds like medical tools.
Yeah.
He said he was in a perfectly white space with rounded walls, that he couldn't see anyone, but he knew there must be someone behind him. And eventually, they attached some sort of machine to him that poked him full of needles. And all of this is extremely similar to the type of dreams that I would have at that age.
What's your blood type? Would it happen to be, are you Rh negative is what I'm asking?
I don't know off the top. Is there a connection around that?
Yeah. Yeah. Get your blood type checked.
I will. Yeah, and I think that for me has been the most chilling, is just seeing the pattern emerge longitudinally throughout my family, throughout the last 100 years or so. And with my kid, and you're totally powerless to help them with it, except to be that emotional support and to break the cycle and say, hey, I believe you. If this is your reality,
Yes,
we can talk about this.
absolutely. Do you have maybe a lump behind either one of your ears?
Him and I both have lumps behind our right ears.
Come on.
Nope. I don't know if it can show up on camera. Maybe you can.
Yeah, kind of hard to see.
Yeah, you can feel it, you know. But no, him and I both have a little nodule behind our right ear, and I only noticed it in the past year. I was like, maybe that's a pimple, maybe it'll go away. And just on a lark, I check his ear too, and yeah, same spot.
About any strange scars or marks in a triangle pattern?
Okay, so here's a weird one. I went on vacation to Scotland last year, and we went to Bonnie Bridge. And if you haven't checked out anything about Bonnie Bridge, definitely do because it's wild. They have the most UFO reporting in all of Europe, and it's a definite hot spot. My friends and I went out and we tried to do CE5, try to summon orbs or UFOs. And while
Right.
we didn't see anything, we all definitely woke up a few hours later. Like, so we're sitting there and then we're back awake and it's like 1 in the morning. So take that for what you will. But I get a hold of my wife the next day and she's not, has had no UFO sightings, none of that. But she says she has a red triangle on her abdomen. And of course, it goes away before I come home. And it was weirdly one of my worries that leaving her and my son alone, something would happen while I was gone. And she gets a triangle on her body, a red, perfect, angular, straight line triangle that disappears over a few days.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you this right now. I believe everything you're telling me.
I appreciate
I
that.
do. There's too many things that you've said that are just too consistent with the reports that I've gotten. Um, I have another question. You were talking about when the creatures would come in your room. You said there was a tall one and a shorter one that sometimes wore a helmet. Uh, did it look anything like the Hopkinsville goblins?
So now I know about those guys, and to my mind, what it looked like really the most to me is, have you ever seen the old kind of corny Christopher Walken movie, Communion, based on Whitley Strieber's book?
I have not.
Oh, you must. It is just
I'm
great.
gonna write it down. What you said it was called Communion?
Yeah. And so he describes in his book, as well as it's depicted in the movie, I think fairly well, these stumpy little blue guys, short, stocky blue guys, usually accompanied by a tall, skinny gray or white, classic gray or manted, if you will, being. And that's pretty much what it was like. And same with my brother at the cabin, and the little ones always seemed to be in groups of three.
And yes, that cryptid is called Stickman. You just look up Stickman.
Okay, I will.
Holy cow!
Yeah, man.
I
Sorry to
don't know
hit
where to
every
go from
single
this.
trope one by one in my story, but
No, no, that's this is freaking awesome. I think you've covered most of the questions I had written down here. I'm double check. Yeah. Holy cow. So have we reached the end of your experiences?
I mean, there've there have been more minor experiences, but those are the main highlights. I guess one that bears mentioning is that when a friend and I want to say last summer, had started messing around with the CE5 stuff. She lives out in Colorado. We had started talking about this, and she flew out. I said, I have an activity. Let's humor me. Let's do this for fun. We're going to try to summon a UFO. And she giggled about it. I was like, okay, yeah, fine, let's do that. And so, we're I live out in the country. I've got a deck, got perfect view of the sky. So we did the whole meditation and crop circle tones and that whole process. And within about a minute of having done that, almost right away, we start seeing this blinky, flashy thing come across the sky. Nothing phenomenal with relation to that. If you aren't really looking at it, you might think it's an airplane or a helicopter. Except for the fact there's no helicopter sound, there's no airplane sound. It's way, way high up there, if that's what it is. And it's going along, and then it stops. And as we're doing this, we're both like we're both getting angry at each other. We're trying to debate and figure out what this thing is. And my technique is, okay, I pull out the stopwatch and I start timing between the blinks what the interval is. And then the interval changes. And so she starts counting the blinks between intervals. Well, then the pattern changes as well. So it seemed to almost be responding to us, and we're like, well, it's only flown in a straight line, it's not doing anything crazy. So then, remember, it was going horizontally way up in the sky, stops. Well, then it starts going up at a right angle, disappears in one area, reappears in another, flashes real bright, and to my eye, it looked like it was going outward away from us into space.
Holy cow. Yeah.
So, and
wow.
like I said, it wasn't up close, but we did see that one do weird things.
Right. I haven't really looked into that. I hear about the people, they go out into the desert and that's what they do for fun. Sounds like you might be one of those people, and I'm not judging you for it. I'm not.
Sometimes, I stargaze a lot too, so it's something to do while you wait.
Yeah. Well, I'm waiting for this constellation to come up over the horizon. Let's try to summon a UFO.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing astrophotography, it takes hours to get that prolonged exposure, so you got a lot of time to think.
Right. Well, Ryan, I tell you what, we've been doing this for a little over an hour. This has been fascinating. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we wrap this one up?
No, I think that about covers it. I just want to say, John, I really thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell my story. Almost nothing good ever comes of me telling my story, but it's a positive to be able to talk about it with someone who's receptive and willing to listen. So thank you for your courtesy.
No problem. I appreciate you listening to the show. And with that, if you have a paranormal encounter and you'd like to come on the show, you can email me at mythsandmullets@gmail.com. Until next time, I'll talk to you later. You gotta go.
Shadow in the pines, lurking in the dusky air. Bigfoot stomps through the woods like he don't care. Lights in the sky flash green then blue. Aliens descending with a secret or two. Whispers in the breeze, cold fingers down your spine. Ghosts in the graveyard, twisting through time. Eyes wide open in the dead of night. The myths and monsters giving one hell of a fright. Oh, Myths, Monsters, and Mullets podcast, spinning wild tales of a future and a past. Hosted by John Methenkamp's fiery soul. He takes us where the wild unknown flows. Oh, Myths, as the coyotes howl. A UFO zipping just above the trees, grabbing hold of wonder like a southern summer breeze. Some call it crazy, others call it a lie, but listen real close as the truth passes by. The lines are blurry, the story's bold. John Methenkamp spins them into southern gold. Apparitions dancing in the smoky haze, legends of the deep south told in hollers and bays. Bigfoot runs free, chasing shadow dreams. Aliens keep secrets like moonlight beams. Down by the bayou, you hear a raspy growl. Swamp gas glowing as the coyotes howl. A UFO zipping just above the trees, grabbing hold of wonder like a southern summer breeze. Some call it crazy, others call it a lie, but listen real close as the truth passes